Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Antonio Benjamin. I am a justice at the National High Court of Brazil, the Cour de Cassation Conseil d'État of my country. I have the great pleasure to open this Africa Environmental Law Congress that happens within the context of the second IUCN World Environmental Law Congress that was supposed to have occurred last year in Rio de Janeiro. As chair of WCL, the World Commission on Environmental Law of IUCN, it is my great pleasure to speak to my colleagues from Morocco, from Africa, and from around the world. Let me begin thanking our Moroccan hosts. The Mohammed VI Foundation for Environmental Protection, and especially Her Royal Highness Princess Lala Hasna, the chair of the foundation, Mrs. Nouzha Alaoui, the Secretary General, and our dear colleague, Herman, and I will speak more about Herman in a minute. The theme of the second World Environmental Law Congress of IUCN, the one that we couldn't have last year, and now it's split into regional events like this, is a critical decade for environmental law. And one might wonder if we are referring to the future or to the past 10 years, because the past 10 years have also been critical. And some of those important aspects will be highlighted during this Congress. But the reference here is to the next 10 years, what we can expect, and more importantly, what we should expect from now until the end of the decade for environmental law, but also for nature in general. The theme of this Africa Congress is water, desertification, and law. We all know that water is the foundation of life. And wherever there is water, at least in the blue planet, the little earth, there is life. Life can flourish. This applies to Africa, but also to the whole world, which means that what we'll be discussing today and tomorrow from an African perspective has major lessons and repercussions for other parts of the world, including my own region, Latin America, and my own country, Brazil. Let me thank a few institutions and people at this early stage. Later on, as we introduce chairs and speakers, we'll be able to thank individually those colleagues that have helped us enormously in putting together such an important event. First of all, the scientific committee. And I would like to mention my dear colleagues, Professor Christina Voigt, Ali Mekawa, Robert Wabunoha from UNEP, Robert Kibuchi from the University of Nairobi, Damilola Olawi, originally from Nigeria, now in Qatar, Emmanuel Wigirashibuja, former Chief Justice of the East African Court from Rwanda, and a law professor, Judge Elisa Samuel from Mozambique. She is the Dean of the Judicial Academy of Mozambique. And finally, my dear colleague Herman from the Mohammed VI Foundation. Herman has been absolutely essential to the organization and the design of this Congress. Without him, we would not have this Congress. Without the team of the foundation, we would not have this Congress. Without the scientific committee, we would not have this Congress. So thanking Herman, I would like to thank everyone that has contributed scientifically or in terms of logistics to the success of this African Congress. Let me also thank Emily Goskin from the World Commission on Environmental Law, our executive officer. Her hands are everywhere, and she's everywhere. She has helped enormously us, together with Professor Nicholas Briner, the WCL Deputy Chair, in organizing the two previous events. The Inter-American Environmental Law Congress that we held in Mexico City at the Supreme Court at the beginning of this month, and the Oceania Environmental Law Congress that we held in Fiji immediately after that, with the organization, extraordinary organization of our colleague Maria Muavezi and her team at the IUCN office in Fiji. Water desertification and law is absolutely crucial, as I said previously, to Africa, but to all parts of the world. We can say that next to the biodiversity crisis, the climate change crisis, we live a water crisis too. Some places that used to have plenty of water, had never seen a drought, now face droughts every 5 years. I could never imagine a drought in the Amazon. When I was a child, I learned from my teachers in kindergarten that the Amazon was the blue continent, blue and green. So I personally, I am very attached to this issue because it has global repercussions. Moreover, as you know, next year we are having another session of the World Water Forum, which will happen in Dakar. The previous one was in Brasilia. And one of the key documents ever prepared by judges, by several of the experts that are here with us, was drafted in the previous Water Forum in Brasilia, the 2016-18 Declaration of Judges on Water Justice. We will have a whole panel on this declaration. Let me finish thanking the partners, and especially the United Nations Environment Program. Everything that WCL does is hand in hand with UNEP. And I would like to thank both Arnold Kreilhuber and Robert Wabunoha for the great support, not just for this Congress, but to every previous initiative that we have had together. We are always together. And it has to be this way. When I was first elected in Jeju, South Korea, in 2012, in my program that I presented to the Congress, I put Africa as my priority. And for 9 years, Africa has been the priority of WCL. We had very few members in Africa. We had no judge as a member from Africa. And now our membership has increased manifold, and we have a very robust group of judges, prosecutors, NGOs that work with environmental law, academics, all together with WCL and our partners. Let me finish saying that coming from Brazil, I'm fully aware of the cultural, the historical proximity between us, the Iberians, and the Moroccans. We have 800 years of history together. We still identify in our water legal system measures, instruments that came from Arab and Andalus legal thinking. Still nowadays in Valencia, the water judges meet every month outside of the cathedral, and under customary, let's name it, under Arab customary law, Andalus decide water cases. And as a Brazilian, as a member of this much broader cultural dimension and family, I would like to personally thank the Moroccans for having hosted us before and now again. When I proposed to Herman and to Professor Voigt that we do this Congress in Rabat, I got from Herman and his colleagues an immediate yes. There was no pause for meditation, for consultation. They knew that this would be important for all of us, and they were immediately on board. So many thanks to all of you. I'll have a chance to speak later and thank specific colleagues in different panels. But for the moment, welcome to all of you, the chairs, the speakers, the audience, the participants that are in person at the foundation. We are all together. Many thanks. It's my great pleasure now to invite Professor Christina Voigt, our great expert on climate change, biodiversity, and everything else. She is encyclopedic or encyclopedical, or has encyclopedical knowledge on law, international law, but also on the science that inform environmental law. And we are very privileged to have her with us today to speak at the very opening, well, since we are in the Olympics period, just to begin the conversation from a science, legal, theoretical perspective on this very relevant theme of water and desertification in a broader picture. Professor Voigt.
Thank you so much, Justice Antonio Benjamin, for your kind words. Dear Excellencies, dear Justices, dear colleagues, dear friends, it is with great pleasure to welcome you all to the second World Environmental Law Congress organized by the World Commission on Environmental Law of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, IUCN, together with the United Nations Environment Programme and the Mohammed VI Foundation for Environmental Protection. As Justice Benjamin just said, the overall topic of the Second World Environmental Law Congress is the critical decade for environmental law. Due to the current pandemic, the Congress has been divided into 5 regional events, each one focusing on one important environmental topic with particular relevance to the region. On behalf of the World Commission on Environmental Law, I therefore want to warmly welcome you to the African Environmental Law Congress. The Congress is held in a hybrid manner in Rabat, but with participation worldwide. And it is kindly hosted by the Mohammed VI Foundation for Environmental Protection, to which the World Commission on Environmental Law would like to express its sincerest gratitude. And I would also like to use this moment to express our deep gratitude, as Justice Benjamin just did, our deep gratitude, deep appreciation and thanks for the tireless as well as excellent work done by Mr. Ayman Shakawi in organizing this Congress. Thank you, Ayman. Our thanks go also to Emily Gaskin, the Executive Officer of the World Commission, and to Hamsan Verskan from the Foundation, as well as to the mastermind behind the Congress, Justice Antonio Benjamin. Today and tomorrow, we will be joined in discussing the topic of water desertification and law. And which place could be more suitable for addressing these pertinent issues than the African continent, the oldest inhabited territory of the earth, with the human species originating from the continent. Africa, with its richness of natural resources, and with its remarkable variety of flora and fauna and ecosystems, many of them endemic, only found on African soils and in African waters. However, Africa is also heavily affected by a wide range of environmental challenges, including desertification, deforestation, water scarcity, soil degradation, and many others. These environmental concerns are already significant, but they're expected to worsen as climate change impacts Africa. The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has identified Africa as the continent most vulnerable to climate change impacts. For example, African agriculture is mostly based on rain. The impact of climate change is therefore very pronounced and affects food production, food security, livelihoods, health, and life. Deforestation is affecting Africa at twice the world rate, according to the United Nations Environmental Programme. Africa is losing over 4 million hectares of forest per year, which is twice the average deforestation rate for the rest of the world, and about 65% of Africa's agricultural land suffers from soil degradation. Water scarcity is pronounced. Africa has 9% of the world's freshwater resources, while 16% of the world's population. Africa has some of the world's mightiest rivers and the second largest lake in the world. Yet the continent is the second driest in the world, with millions of people suffering from water shortages throughout the years, and even without the impacts of climate change. Water development and management are also much more complex due to the multiplicity of transboundary water resources in Africa, like rivers, lakes, and aquifers. Around 3/4 of sub-Saharan Africa falls within 53 international river catchment areas that traverse multiple boundaries. This raises important legal and political issues, but it also gives rise for hope, for cooperation and collaboration among riparian states. direct drivers for environmental challenges are human activities. Primarily land and sea use change, direct exploitation like overharvesting and hunting, but also activities which do not originate in Africa, but impact Africa, such as climate change, such as ocean pollution, or the introduction of invasive species. Well, the challenges are significant, but so is the potential to address them. Recent economic expansion and the large and young population make Africa a force to reckon with, an important economic market in the global context. But a thriving economic market depends on sustainably managed natural resources. It benefits the economy and it benefits the people to have a healthy environment. This important insight is already recognized in the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, which is one of the very few regional treaties, human rights treaties, that state that all peoples shall have the right to a general satisfactory environment favorable to their development. The European Convention on Human Rights, for example, has no such right and could learn quite a bit from Africa. It will be important to identify, design, implement, and enforce laws that make this right operational, a right and a duty on states and decision makers. Law is an important enabler for transformative change. Environmental law is crucial to turn the tide. It is crucial to change behavior and values. Both on the international and the national level, we see vast developments in environmental law and in recognizing the value of healthy ecosystems and the environment for economic and social development. Even in other areas of law, such as investment treaties, trade agreements, human rights law, constitutional law, planning, zoning law, water acts, agricultural acts, and so forth. Internationally, we see developments that recognize that resource mobilization and support to African nations are critical to the effective implementation of multilateral environmental treaties. National laws and the environmental rule of law will be decisive to address environmental challenges and in providing solutions. One example that I would like to mention is the National Environment Act of Uganda, adopted in 2019. This 200 pages act is one of the most comprehensive and modern environmental acts in the world. Certainly, it is much ahead of environmental laws in many, if not all, European countries. In this new act, not only are the rights of nature and a right to a decent environment statutory rights, it also sets up a comprehensive list of environmental principles, as well as several governments, arrangements, and financial incentives, planning regulations, environmental compliance, and monitoring and sanctions, all aimed at environmentally sound management. Also, the World Commission on Environmental Law is active in providing legal solutions. In its 2016 IUCN World Declaration on the Environmental Rule of Law, the Commission outlined 13 principles for developing and implementing solutions for ecologically sustainable development. We hope that they will inform decision makers and implementers alike. They will certainly also be of use to judges and to courts. With this as our background canvas for our discussion on water desertification and the law, it is with great pleasure and privilege to introduce our opening speakers. Our first speaker is Dr. Bruno Oberle. He is the Director General of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. And I understand that he will be joining us via a video intervention.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me to speak at this conference. As you all know, our future on the planet depends on our capacity to face two intricate and interconnected crises: the global loss of biodiversity and climate change. Species extinction and global warming are natural phenomena caused by human activities. Our responses have to come both from the side of the science and from law. Every coin has two sides. Precisely for this matter, those sides are the science and the law, and both are essential to achieve effective conservation and restoration of nature. For that, laws and policies have to be anchored in science, and the link between the scientific community and legal community must be strong. IUCN brings together scientists, policy and legal experts in a combined effort to promote and enhance conservation of the natural world by laying out reliable data on the state of biodiversity in protected areas, particularly through the red and green lists. IUCN also engages with policymakers and legal practitioners to bring forward ambitious environmental, legal, and policy frameworks. Throughout its history, our organization has played a key role in initiating and drafting major international agreements, such as CITES, the World Heritage Convention, Ramsar, and the Convention on Biological Diversity, and many other regional agreements. Today, IUCN, through the collective effort of the World Commission on Environmental Law and the Environmental Law Center in Bonn, continues to shape the development of international environmental law, including biodiversity in areas beyond national jurisdiction. But the success of the law depends in many ways on its sound and effective implementation, so that the gap between commitment and enforcement can be closed, and thus ensure a responsible use of natural resources that can secure the ecologically sustainable development. To this end, IUCN works in close collaboration with governments and other key stakeholders around the world to enhance enforcement of environmental legislation and support the development of inclusive and effective implementation mechanisms. In recent years, the Supreme Court of Mexico has been at the forefront of environmental conservation through progressive enforcement of national laws in line with the right to a healthy environment enshrined in the Mexican Constitution. As gatekeepers of the law, judges sitting at all levels of the judiciary have the power to secure effective enforcement of environmental law and to guarantee that the state fulfills its international commitments. To conclude, allow me to congratulate the World Commission on Environmental Law for co-organizing this series of events around the world, which are testimony of the importance of reinforcing the environmental rule of law to achieve global conservation objectives.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oberle, for your kind introductory words. We have as third speaker, Dr. Arnold Kreilhuber. He is the acting director of the United Nations Environment Program, of the Law Division of the United Nations Environmental Program. And he has many years of professional experience in the field of environmental law, diplomacy, and policy. Dr. Kreilhuber joined the United Nations Environmental Program in 2005 and advanced work on important issues such as environmental crime, human rights and the environment, judges and the environment, freshwater law and governments, very relevant to this Congress, and most recently, in response to the attacks, the protection of environmental defenders. Dr. Kreilhuber, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Professor Voigt, and what a great pleasure it is to be with you all today. And let me at the outset thank the IUCN World Commission on Environmental Law, together with the Mohammed VI Foundation for Environmental Protection, for the great partnership and for inviting UNEP to address this African Environmental Law Congress, which, as has already been mentioned, is the third in a series of events for the Second World Environmental Law Congress. And what a fantastic journey it has been so far. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, participants, we are experiencing a dramatic loss of nature, largely caused by human activity, which in turn threatens a broad range of human rights depending on thriving biodiversity, healthy habitats, and ecosystems. There is an urgent need to recognize and support the right to a healthy environment globally. Why is that? As more habitats are degraded or lost and species become extinct, human rights impacts increase significantly. Drought and desertification exacerbate people's vulnerabilities. 90% of people supported by drylands, for example, live in developing countries where women, children, and other vulnerable groups are more affected by land degradation and drought. The impact of desertification, poor land health, biodiversity loss, and climate change could also force up to 700 million people to migrate by 2050. The UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration is therefore a rallying call for the protection and revival of ecosystems all around the world for the benefit of people and nature. It aims to halt the degradation of ecosystems and restore them to achieve global goals. Only with healthy ecosystems can we enhance people's livelihoods, counteract climate change, and stop the collapse of biodiversity. As ecosystem restoration measures could help to combat drought and desertification and improve human well-being. They can have positive effects on reducing poverty, achieving food and nutrition security, and underpin a green recovery from the pandemic, as well as enhance resilience for the future of people and the planet. Although the right to a healthy environment and the link of environmental rights is well established and is today legally reflected in over 150 countries, and an overwhelming majority of states in Africa have recognized the rights in their constitutions, laws, or through regional instruments, as we have already heard, for example, the African Charter on Human Rights and People's Rights, there is no formal international and universal recognition of this important right. Formal recognition by states would help elevate environmental rights alongside other long recognized human rights. It would help implementation on the ground by courts, citizens, and governments through clarifying that all people everywhere have a legal right to a healthy environment. It is therefore time that we make the right a reality for everyone everywhere. And UNEP is committed in supporting governments and stakeholders, including in the Africa region, to advance the recognition of this right. Let me speak a little bit about the role of environmental rule of law. Environmental rule of law is essential in this context and for improving our relationship with nature. It is no accident that the 5th Montevideo Environmental Law Program, which is UNEP's 10-year framework program for environmental law, which was adopted by governments at the 4th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly in 2019, will work to promote the development and implementation of environmental rule of law around the world, strengthen related capacity at the national level, and contribute to the environmental dimension of the 2030 Agenda. Threats to the environment, in particular the widespread effects of drought, desertification, pollution, water scarcity, and climate change, require effective policy responses that promote and ensure the environmental rule of law. The role of environmental rule of law in addressing the challenges of environmental management is clear. Effective laws and strong institutions are necessary to achieve the commitments we have made and to realize good governance. Environmental rule of law integrates environmental needs with the essential elements of the rule of law and provides the basis for improving good environmental governance. Environmental rule of law highlights environmental sustainability by connecting it with fundamental rights and obligations, providing a foundation for environmental rights and obligations, without which the enforcement of legal rights and obligation and environmental governance simply falters. When implemented, environmental laws have often proven successful in controlling pollution and sustainably managing natural resources. In particular, procedural rights, such as access to information, access to public participation, and access to legal remedies, provide the means for achieving environmental goals. The fifth Montevideo Environmental Law Program seeks to design and deliver strategic activities with a focus on areas in which environmental law interventions and the continued development of environmental rule of law can have the greatest impact, including in addressing the triple global crises of biodiversity loss, climate change, and pollution. Under the program, countries have and will continue to provide guidance to UNEP on relevant institutional arrangements for the program's success in achieving its objectives. The program also, for the first time, has placed partnerships with stakeholders, including legal experts, at the core of its design. The decade-long program will see collaborative, participatory, partner-driven implementation of its objectives. And I would like to invite you all to continue engaging with the program as we begin its implementation in earnest, which, as you may understand, has been slightly hampered by the ongoing pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, we have already heard that this is a critical decade for environmental law. And it is therefore no accident either that this Congress, the Second World Environmental Law Congress, has as its theme a critical decade for environmental law, but that is also the theme for the fifth Montevideo program. And this decade will be essential for us and will be pivotal for us in terms of making the rights-based action to respond to environmental challenges a reality, and also in setting our course for a green recovery from COVID-19. Ecosystem restoration efforts supported by and implemented through environmental rule of law in lands degraded by drought, desertification, biodiversity loss, climate change, and other environmental impacts can bring economic resilience, create jobs, raise incomes, increase food security and water security. And we have already heard how important this is, particularly for the African continent. The integration of environmental and human rights is key to ensuring a healthy and sustainable planet for present and future generations and supports the achievement of the SDGs. UNEP is particularly also encouraged that the Human Rights Council has also noted and advanced the need for a human rights-based approach to conserving and restoring natural spaces. Ladies and gentlemen, let me in concluding thank again the World Commission on Environmental Law, together with the Mohammed VI Foundation, for inviting me to speak today. UNEP is a proud partner of this event, and we are inspired by the continuing work to raise a strong voice for a planet in crisis. And we look forward to contributing to the outcomes of this Congress as we work together to build a better future for all life on a safe, clean, healthy, and sustainable planet. And I wish you all fruitful and interesting discussions in the sessions ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Arnold Kreilhuber. Thank you so much for speaking to us here, but thank you also for your very important work on the fifth Montevideo program, and best of success for it, and you can count on our support in all aspects. It is now with great pleasure that I would like to introduce our final speaker in this opening session. Our final speaker is Ms. Nouzha Alaoui. She is the Secretary General of the Mohammed VI Foundation for Environmental Protection. She has a wealth of experience in the field of environment and sustainable development. For the last 2 decades, Mrs. Alaoui has led the evolution of the foundation from an impactful inspiration, as I learned, to a recognized and highly regarded established institution. She is an active and committed promoter of environmentally sustainable development as a member of the Economic, Social and Environment Council of the Kingdom of Morocco, member of the scientific committees of COP22, the World Environmental Education Congress, the Education and Communication Commission of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, as well as Mission 4.7 Education Task Force of Experts. Mrs. Alaoui has an academic background in sustainable development, organizational management, and leadership in civil society organizations. Ms. Alaoui, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your kind words regarding to me. Dear IUCN Director General, dear Chair of the IUCN World Commission on Environmental Law, Justice Antonio, dear Acting Director of the Law Division of UNEP, Arnold, distinguished Commission Chairs, dear judges, directors, professors, guests, and colleagues. First of all, let me, on behalf of Her Royal Highness Princess Al Hasna and the Foundation and the Mohammed VI Foundation for Environmental Protection, we are happy to welcome you both physically and digitally at the Hassan II International Environmental Training Center. We are also pleased to convene this Congress in partnership with the International Union for the Conservative of Nature World's Commission on Environmental Law and the United Nations Environment Programme. The Mohammed VI Foundation for Protection Environment was established in June 2001 at the initiative of His Majesty King Mohammed VI, and Her Royal Highness Princess Al Hasna has been entrusted as the chair from the beginning. The Foundation's fundamental mission is to raise awareness and educate to sustainable development. In this mission, the Foundation works with the public at large, from school children to political and economic decision makers to the general public. The Foundation develops awareness of environmental issues, the right to healthy environment and sustainable development as enwritten in the Constitution of the Kingdom of Morocco. As you can see, there is a strong alignment between the mission of the Foundation and this African Regional Congress, part of series looking at a critical decade for environmental law. As you know, the nexus of water and desertification is a particularly relevant one for Africa, all the more so in the context of climate change and sustainable development. The Mohammed VI Foundation has a series of activities that look at those issues on a daily basis. First and foremost, the safeguarding and development of the historical Marrakesh palm groves. In addition, water and desertification have been for several years embedded in the activities of the Eco School and Young Reporter for the Environment programs that the Foundation implements in Morocco. As an African and Mediterranean NGO, the Mohammed VI Foundation for Environmental is keen to strengthen knowledge sharing across the continent and alongside the Mediterranean Sea. Both the African Youth Climate Hub and the African Green Universities and Youth Education Network, launched by the Foundation and its partner in the last 2 years, are concrete examples of a commitment for impactful South-South collaboration. That commitment, however, is not recent, and the Foundation has hosted over several years, and in collaboration with UNEP, a series of workshops for the benefit of young journalists and communication professionals committed to environmental protection and sustainable development. As I mentioned earlier, we are hosting this African Regional Congress in close partnership with the International Union for the Conservation of Nature's World Commission on Environmental Law and the United Nations Environment Programme. We are proud to have a long-standing partnership with both institutions. When it comes to the United Nations Environment Programme, the Foundation has been an accredited stakeholder for several years and is in the process of renewing its MOU with UNEP. The center has hosted previously several UNEP events in the past, such as sub-regional workshop with UNEP on the development of an assessment of marine litter and microplastic, event with FAO, or more recently, event in the context of the road to COP26. The collaboration with UNEP has also included a study on the introduction of electric mobility in Marrakesh. Furthermore, the Hassan II International Center for Environmental Training hosts, in close partnership with UNEP, the Secretariat of the African Green Universities and Youth Education Network, a member of UNEP's Youth Education Alliance. Finally, one of the foundation's representatives has been elected as regional facilitator, major groups and stakeholders for the African region within the UNEP space. The foundation has also collaborated with the IUCN in the past. I, for example, am a member of the IUCN Commission on Education and Communication. Dr. Heddan has been involved with IUCN for decades and currently serves as regional vice chair for North Africa in the same commission. And evidently, we are pleased to have enhanced our collaboration over the past year with the IUCN WCEL through several activities that build up to this Congress. The Foundation is keen to further strengthen its relationship with IUCN for the World Conservation Congress this year and beyond. I thank you for your attention and wish you all a stimulating, productive, and powerful Congress. And I give the floor to my future speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your kind words. Thank you for introducing us and the audience to the foundation. But thank you also so much for collaborating with the IUCN World Commission on Environmental Law on this African Congress, Environmental Law Congress. It's a great pleasure, it's a great privilege for us, and it's a great joy. And we hope this is the first of many events to come where we can collaborate and develop this, this friendship together. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's our will. Absolutely. Thank you.
With that, we have finalized our opening session of the African Environmental Law Congress. I would like to thank all speakers for their words and for their attention to the audience. And with that, I turn the floor back to the organizers.